The King of the Battlefield Chapter 211, Sky Lord End. It really showed how much Azul truly hated to be associated with Dantalion. Hatred. Azul despised Dantalion. As Muyong had never met Dantalion, he wasn't able to recognize the scent as Mertiudun could. What is your relationship with Dantalion? And so, he couldn't help but ask. Although he was planning to disregard other subjects and focus on the trade, if the subject was Dantalion, it was a different story. The incarnation of lies and truth. People said you would lose your soul the moment you were deceived by him. If Azul was associated with Dantalion, he might need to reconsider the trade itself. Azul let out a sigh. I don't think it would be meaningful to hide it anymore. Yes, I was his vassal. A vassal. In other words, he was Dantalion's demon king. Muyong raised his eyebrows slightly. He thought Dantalion was alone. But, there was a demon king who followed him? Don't look at me with those eyes. I left because I was sick and tired of Dantalion's lies. Can demon kings leave their demon god? In the first place, the demon kings are attracted by the power of the demon gods. It is natural to leave if the power they were once fascinated by no longer exists. You know, right? Azul thought Muyong was a demon king like him. Although, this wasn't completely wrong. Muyong was following a path close to a demon king's, and his tendency was also very close to theirs. On that note, the demon king and the demon god's relationship. This was the first time he thought about their point of view. The demon kings were in some ways closer to mercenaries, or freelancers. Then, what did the demon kings receive from the demon gods to work under them? It was a topic worth thinking about. However, there was something more urgent to focus on. Where is Dantalion? The first demon god he wanted to kill was Dantalion. Muyong turned Azul to face him and spoke directly. I don't know. No one in the world could divine his location. Did he mean Dantalion was like the wind? Muyong didn't ask any further. Azul, who was Dantalion's vassal in the past. Could he really trust his words and his credibility to pass by the Sky Lord, or did he now need to find another way? So, what do you want to do? If you can't trust me, I don't mind if you want to go back. Of course, don't think you'll be getting back your payment. I'll go. Muyong had decided. Either way, an enormous amount would need to be sacrificed to force his way in. This snake was that sort of existence. It had no ego and no feeling, it just consumed infinitely and multiplied. There would have been only one order given to the Sky Lord. To eat up everything it sees. That was why it was able to stop even Diablo's army. Then, let's wait until evening. At night, he has a blind spot. Azul crossed his arms. Muyong looked at the Sky Lord in the distance. It feels like I'm seeing the pinnacle of artificial life. Muyong didn't know who created it. But, the power he felt from it was on another level. If he could dissect the monster, Muyong's knowledge would also drastically increase. It could help in making his undead even stronger. I found 2 women who were coming this way. What should we do? Bi Sungmin, who had left for a while, had returned, wearing a jet black cloak. After becoming an elder lich, Sungmin's awareness has also increased. Muyong had noticed a very faint presence, but it seemed like Sungmin noticed it too. After hearing that it was 2 women, he had some idea as to who they were. Capture them alive and bring them to me. Yes. Swish. Sungmin's body disappeared without a trace. Muyong looked into the mountains with curiosity. A duel between an elder lich and a high elf. He was slightly interested in the result. Anne was the highest ranked high elf. She was powerful and holy, on another level compared to most dragon types, and that difference in level was enough to make her comparable to ancient dragons. As she was someone who followed the path of the moon, she knew how to hide her body better than others. What are these monsters? I don't understand. Pa. Anne and Snow looked at the march of specters. Anne was originally a member of a tribe who lived in the hometown of Shandalton, the Dragon of Light. Of course, due to Shandalton's influence, she was close to light. Although she followed Muyong for the revival and safety of her tribe, Muyong had disappeared for nearly a month, only to return with all kinds of monsters. What is he trying to do by taking all these monsters to the demon god's territory? The hell of the current world. Muyong's actions were enough to raise doubts about him. That was why she couldn't easily follow him. This was the reason why she hid. Pei. Snow reached her hand out. And, Anne stopped her. You can't. Such a pure person like yourself could become influenced by evil if you are not careful. Until we determine his intentions, you need to stay with me. Anne read Snow's powers that were hidden beneath the surface. Anne knew that, depending on how Snow grew up, she could become an overwhelming existence. However, if Muyong was truly evil, Snow would be influenced by him and walk the path of world destruction. She couldn't let that happen. If the world was destroyed, the revival of her tribe would also become pointless. However, that didn't mean she could leave him be. She needed to find out about his true intentions. So, while concealing their presence, she was following him. By using the High Elf's authority, Shadow of Moon. Swish! Anne raised her eyes. Right before her eyes, the darkness swirled and formed a sphere. The Lich who suddenly joined Muyong. He was someone who Anne and Snow saw for the first time. Klea! The staff the Lich held rang. We've been caught. Anne quickly reacted. She instantly placed a barrier on Snow and wielded a dagger. In a flash, the dagger shined as if permeated by the spirit of the moon. Thud. A sound like a death rattle. Pshh. Black flames rose. 1, 2, 3. Holes were created on the ground and the number of flames increased exponentially. Sweara. Anne touched her earrings once. Then, Anne's appearance changed into a huge white eagle. Whenever she flapped her wings, an intense wind blew and fought against the flames. Then the Lich placed his staff into the ground. A few meters in area was colored with darkness and within it, black hands appeared and tried to grab Anne. Anne couldn't avoid all of the black hands which were a few thousand in number. Kayak! Anne opened her mouth wide. And soon, numerous particles of light heated up and exploded. Although the black hands that were approaching her had disappeared, she couldn't remove them all. Anne, who was caught by the ankle, was slowly pulled down to the ground. The Lich held his staff and twirled it in the air. Then, some kind of gate seemed to be opening up. With a thud sound, a huge black door was created in the air. Afterwards, the door opened up, and black bats were released. Skreek! Skreek! The numbers were too large to be counted. No matter how many she got rid of, more appeared and reached Anne. They bit her wings and plucked out her feathers. However, Anne was the highest-ranked high elf. She couldn't be beaten with just black bats. Thud! The Lich, Sungmin, opened another door. Amazing! It has been a while since I had to use 2 doors to fight against an opponent. Swang! As the door opened up, sluggish shadow monsters showed themselves. After seeing them, Anne was terrified. Shadow prisoners! How could a mere Lich summon such monsters from thin air? The shadow prisoners had an iron ball and chains shackled to their hands and feet. However, they were able to freely increase the length of the chains. A few hundred shadow prisoners appeared and threw their iron ball and chains towards Anne, as if they were fishing. Their power and speed could not be ignored. It was especially hard for Anne to avoid the ball and chains, as well as the bats. Kayak! After blocking numerous times, her body was wrapped up in the ball and chains in the end. Thud! After she turned back to her original form, she collapsed to the ground. Sungmin turned his head slightly and lowered his head after looking at Snow, who was shivering. My master wishes to see you. Myung looked at Snow and An who were tied up. Pa! Pa! With her hands bound, Snow approached Myung and rubbed her face on his leg. On the other hand, An's expression was very dark. What exactly are you planning to do? What? What are you talking about? You have destroyed things with these monsters and you are with a demon king as well. She was talking about Azul. Myung shrugged his shoulders. I have no intention to persuade you. If you want to leave, leave. It was a bit of a waste to give up An's fighting power, but if she wasn't going to help, he had no need for her strength. I cannot even guess what your intentions are. I'm planning to go to the demon god's territory. It isn't a great place for a high elf to go. She felt like a door was slammed close in front of her. However, Anne bit her lips. I'm going to follow Snow. Snow. She cannot be allowed to be influenced by you. Anne knew how great Snow's hidden potential was. In terms of simply potential, she was comparable to Myung. But, if her powers were to be influenced by him, it would become a very large power of evil. She needed to stop that from happening. Myung also read Anne's will that was conveyed through her eyes. Using the expression that Snow could be influenced. It meant that she had that much sense of vigilance. Snow was a saintess in the past, and was now in unknown existence. However, if one thing was certain, it was that she would surely add strength to fight against the demon kings and demon gods. And to fight against them, she couldn't be influenced by him. This was something Myung also agreed with. Do what you want. Myung looked in another direction. The sky was slowly sinking into darkness. The time has come. The blind spot Azul showed. In other words, the place the Sky Lord couldn't sense. Azul entered the territory. Every 14 days, the Sky Lord sheds. Although it is an ignorant bastard that even eats up its own skin. Thanks to this, there is a blind spot like this once every 14 days. As it used its strength to shed, there were areas that it was unable to pay attention to. It isn't an adult yet. When Myung asked, Azul nodded. It continues to grow. It is scary because it adapts to all attacks and evolves. Then, it seemed to be created to evolve and withstand Diablo's attacks. Asa pierced a hole into the shell the Sky Lord shed. We need to move before it eats up all of its shells. I'm not sure if we can do it in time though. Azul looked at Myung's army. There were too many monsters accompanying Myung. From now on, don't even let out a sound. With a warning, he quickly moved. He pierced a hole and went out the other side. Myung and Myung's army moved a bit faster as well. Peep! That moment, a whistling sound could be heard from somewhere. Damn it! Azul frowned. Rrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr Fortunately, the target wasn't Muyong, but something that had started to attack the Sky Lord. Bang! Pow! The bomb burst, and the world seemed to be engulfed in flames. Attack! From afar, a voice like this was heard. Knights on horses led dozens of different species to attack the Sky Lord. However, they were unable to damage the Sky Lord at all. However, rather than the Sky Lord, Muyong was more focused on the one who was carrying out the attack on the Sky Lord. Baltan. The guardian of his territory, Baltan. The one Muyong revived as an undead. Muyong had ordered him to guard his territory in the demon god's territory. But, why was Baltan at this place attacking the Sky Lord? Chapter 212, Demon King of Iron, Enrith 1. It was fortunate that the Sky Lord had just finished shedding. Snakes that shed their skin tended to be weaker right after they shed. In fact, the Sky Lord's movement was slower than expected. The overwhelming size and strength were still there, but Baltan repeatedly chose the right timing to attack and retreat. It seemed like Baltan had deliberately waited for it to shed. It's actually a good thing. We need to move before the Sky Lord eats up everything. It should be possible. Asa spoke as if he was chanting a spell. He seemed to have an instinctive fear of the Sky Lord. For a demon king to be taken aback, it meant that the Sky Lord's power was that great. Muyong. Sungmin spoke. He also knew Baltan. There was only one reason why he would call him. It was to ask if they would help Baltan. What are you doing? Don't think of doing something stupid. Even though the Sky Lord just finished shedding, they will never be able to win against the Sky Lord. The Sky Lord's attacks were simple. It used its huge body to gobble up everything in front of it. Baltan was doing well, making timely attacks using his army, but it felt like they were at their limit. Indeed, casualties started to appear. As the Sky Lord rolled its tail to pressure them, a sandstorm started to blow in all directions. Sungmin, take everyone and proceed. I will help as well. No, I'll be okay alone. Muyong spread his wings. The Sky Lord. Muyong didn't plan to risk his life and fight against it. He just wanted to buy time. There were many things he wanted to ask Baltan. To do this, Muyong needed him alive. Furthermore, he was slightly curious about the Sky Devil's power that was able to stop even Diablo. As he knew that its power had been greatly reduced because it had just finished its shedding, it would be a good chance to find out how strong it was. You're a fool. Azul clicked his tongue. However, he was strictly a traitor. He had no thoughts of helping him. He was someone who moved only according to his trade, his promise. Muyong flew up into the air. Swoosh! He took out Anguish and placed the holy flame on it. As the strong powers of Curse and Holy Flame mixed together, he quickly launched it at the Sky Lord. Crash! A huge explosion. The Sky Lord's body shook a bit. But, the Sky Lord didn't even let out a scream. It was just scratched a little. A complete immunity against fire. It's the perfect preparation for Diablo. First, the Holy Flame couldn't produce any damage. It was the curse that produced a hit. But, even the power of the curse had been sharply decreased. A spell was probably placed by the demon gods. It was able to produce such an effect because the curse that was engraved on Anguish was so strong. However, Muyong had many abilities besides the two powers. In fact, no one would have such a wide range of abilities as Muyong. As he spread Gabriel's wings wide, 7,777 feathers floated through the air. Boom boom boom. Countless bursts occurred. But this time, it was an explosion of pure divine power. Gray. For the first time, the Sky Lord let out a scream. It's effective. As the Sky Lord was a very simple creature, it turned its attention towards Muyong. It wasn't prepared to fight against divine powers. At least, it didn't have any protection against pure divine power. Well, if the demon gods created it, how could they give it divine power? Muyong looked down at Anguish. He wasn't able to really mix divine powers with Anguish. Instead, clank! As Muyong touched near his heart, something could be felt. It was a spear. The god-killing spear. Gabriel's weapon. Gabriel's spear neutralized all evil mixed in Muyong, stopped him from being corrupted, and was a way to keep Lucifer in check. This item could be considered as a higher level than Diablo's flame. A true original. A treasure among treasures. Would the Sky Devil be able to prepare for a spear of this caliber? For the first time, Muyong took out the spear for a moment. Zing! In a flash, intense light was emitted from Muyong's heart. The light was so bright that it could even brighten up the demon god's territory that was dyed by darkness. After looking at the bright light, Azul felt pain like his whole body was on fire. It had been a while since he felt this sort of pain. Then, as he looked up after bending his body slightly, he saw the guy with 6 huge wings. Muyong was his name? Was he not a demon king? When Azul first met Muyong, he was able to smell a strong evil scent. He also showed off a unique disposition that all demon kings normally had. But he had never heard of a demon king who used divine powers. He isn't an angel. That couldn't be possible. There were no angels in the underworld. This wasn't a truth that only the humans were aware of. Demons also had the same knowledge. This was the underworld, a place where evil was born. Then what was the divine power that could be felt from him? It was far from the divine powers that the priests of humans or other species used. A bit more, it felt like it was a bit closer to the source. The Sky Lord had a critical weakness. That it was helpless in front of a strength unique in the world. It was also known as special power. Or the world ability. It was called many names. Either way, Diablo's flame couldn't come close to the power of that world ability. Diablo's flame should have been a unique strength, but this meant that it wasn't unique. There was no way for Azul to know that Myung was able to use Diablo's flame because he had absorbed it. Thanks to this, Azul was able to see the Sky Lord being inflicted with damage for the first time. The Sky Lord twisted its huge body. Whenever it did, the sky and the ground shook. It felt like the world was about to be destroyed. A huge sandstorm and strong winds. For the first time, Azul gained interest in the being who he was making a trade with, the one who stood firmly through all this. This was something that never happened before. However, it was lacking. For some reason, Myung seemed unfamiliar in dealing with his strength. If you don't want to be swept away, follow me. Even if you went, you wouldn't be of any help. Azul spoke to Sungmin. Surely, Sungmin exhibited a lot of strength as an elder lich, but it wasn't effective against the Sky Lord. If his opponent wasn't the Sky Lord, like the current army, Sungmin would have been playing an active part in the fight. However, the situation was different. I understand. Sungmin well knew this of himself. He had obviously become stronger as well. He had grown so much that he was incomparable to his past self. However, Myung was still a few steps ahead of Sungmin. It didn't seem like he would be able to easily close this gap. As a commander, Baltan's abilities were outstanding. His ability to notice things and read the situation was excellent. After he read the message Myung wanted to convey, he started to retreat. Rather than being excited about a reunion, now was the time for them to fall back. Retreat? While holding all kinds of weapons created by the dwarves, Baltan and his soldiers started to leave the battlefield. Crash! Thud! As they got further away from the battlefield, the sound became louder. Would the fight between gods be like this? If my eyes did not deceive me. However, Baltan couldn't help but become aware. The moment he saw Myung, he felt like the connection that was lost had been renewed. Wasn't that, our lord? An elf approached him and asked. Although a few things had changed, the person he saw just now was definitely the owner of the territory, Myung. It seemed like Baltan wasn't the only one who felt this way. Our lord was alive. If that's the case, we can end this war. Finally. All his soldiers were delighted. However, Baltan still had a gloomy expression on his face. If he was alive, why did they lose contact for over 2 years? Why did he leave the territory and disappear? Due to his vacancy, the territory had suffered much pain. Although they had grown that much more, he was still hurt by Myung's absence. Thud. The loud sounds continuously spread. However, it became quiet afterwards. Had it been a few seconds since the last sound? It has been a while. Myung appeared. With his wings open, Myung approached swiftly. Greetings, Lord. Baltan kneeled. Although Baltan was hurt by Myung's absence, he was the guardian of the territory. And his master was still Myung. As Baltan kneeled, everyone around them did so as well. There are a lot of things I would like to ask you. But, first, let's change our location. The Sky Lord will wake up soon. From Muyoung's tone of voice, Baltan was able to notice that he wanted to leave quickly. It meant that the fight with the Sky Lord was that gruesome. Baltan nodded his head. Muyoung scratched his head with his hand and started to move with his wings folded. Gabriel's spear was certainly amazing. It was stronger than anything else. But, Muyoung was not accustomed to using Gabriel's strength. As its power sucked away so much of his strength, the recovery would take a while. It was a different feeling than when he used acceleration with his horn. I need to refrain from using it. He was able to momentarily knock the Sky Lord out. As expected, he could produce huge damages. It was possible for him to make it unconscious because his skin had become weaker. However, if Muyoung were to continue the battle, he would be in danger. This event allowed him to understand why Diablo could not cross the border, and why even the demon gods, who had created it, avoided it. So, Muyoung left the scene and took a rain check. During their fight, he was successful in getting a sample of its skin and flesh. If I research this, I will get some sort of result. It was an interesting foreign substance. They were a type of skin and flesh he had never seen before. They were far different from what normal living creatures had. If he conducted research and got results, he could use it to strengthen undead or in other ways. Perhaps, it could lead him to learn more about the demon gods. So, after he took a sample, he gave it to Baltan. Afterwards, he led his army to return to his territory. Azul quickly left after seeing the territory. He said, "When you need me, you can just tell the Lich." However, he looked like he was leaving in a hurry after discovering something unsettling. He looked like he had arrived in a place he shouldn't have. Although Muyoung thought it was odd that he acted that way, he didn't think much of it. The territory has grown much larger. Compared to 2 years ago, it should be about 3 times the size. The population has grown that much as well. Muyoung walked along the main road that led to the castle. Behind him, his army followed. And there were many people in the area who looked at Muyoung. There are a lot more children, I think. There was a war. No, it is currently happening as well. There were a lot of adults who died. Of course, those who survived are that much stronger. It is still going on? Who is the opponent? Baltan stood in front of the castle for a moment. The Lord's castle grew much larger, and was greater than before. The place was spotless, as they had continuously maintained it. In front of it, Baltan nervously spoke. "Demon King of Iron, Enrith. We are at war with him." Demon King of Iron, Enrith. Muyoung couldn't help but react to his name. There were 3 levels to classify the finest demon kings. 7 mountains. 6 lords. 5 stars. Altogether, 18. The lower the number, the stronger they were, especially, the last 5 were like a wall. They could truly be called the kings of the demon kings, and reigned right below demon gods. And if it was the demon king of Iron, Enrith. He's one of 5 stars. The one who is considered as one of the most powerful demon kings. Muyoung understood why Azul left in such a hurry. Chapter 213, Demon King of Iron, Enrith II. Moreover, the titles were not something that the demon kings gave themselves. It was something that Baal had given to honor those 18 demon kings. They were worthy of that much respect, were as powerful as their titles, and had greater armies than other demon kings. But, a war with Enrith? How did you survive? Muyoung couldn't help but ask. The territory obviously had great potential. Most cities wouldn't be able to compete with it. This was because the people were plentiful, and so many diverse species had gathered to create it. However, it wasn't enough to fight against Enrith. If they were to look at things objectively, it would be normal for them to have been completely destroyed. But, looking at the territory, they had actually become more prosperous than in the past. Even though they were at war, the territory and the population had increased in size. Not just that. The ones who survived also had excellent skills. Most high-tier monsters wouldn't be as strong as one of them. Although Muyong had returned, they didn't seem to really greet him. The lord who disappeared for 2 years without a word while a war had started. Of course, it was understandable for them to be in a bad mood. Still, they looked at him with hopeful gazes. They believed the army Muyong brought would certainly be of help. While shaking his head, he led Muyong to the castle. "I'll fill you in on everything after we go up." The inside of the castle was no different from how Muyong remembered. First, it had been kept very clean. It had not been left untouched. Because of this, Muyong believed their faith in their lord had not bottomed out. Soul assimilation. Muyong sat on the throne and looked at Baltan. Baltan was kneeling on one knee in front of him, and his soul began to look sharp again. It was a sign that the connection that had been broken had started to reconnect. As a result, Baltan became a vassal again. The guardian of the territory. As an undead created by Muyong, he had regained his function and authority. Name: Baltan. Level: 445. Type: Guardian Knight. Strength 447, 427 plus 20, Agility 355, 335 plus 20, Stamina 498, 478 plus 20. Intelligence 320, 300 plus 20, Wisdom 345, 325 plus 20, Indomitable 483, 463 plus 20. Plus great understanding of swords. Plus great physical constitution for battle. Plus guardian of the territory, within the designated territory, all stats plus 20. Plus cry of the guardian, within the territory, the toughness of allies increases slightly. Plus strengthening potential, become stronger when you fight to protect. Plus resolve for revenge. Plus high conservation rate, high autonomous will. As Muyong observed him closely, the status viewer showed his information. As expected, Baltan had grown incredibly. Although Muyong had felt it, it was different from actually looking at the stats. If he grew this much, it was enough to consider him as powerful as a top-tier monster. There was only one condition for Baltan to grow. The condition was that he needed to fight battles to protect others. The last 2 years of uninterrupted fighting had made this possible. But even so, it was abnormally fast growth. There must have been something else. It was difficult to become this strong with just battles. Without another opportunity. "Speak!" Muyong commanded. Baltan raised his head. "After the Lord disappeared, we increased our territory. As the territory got bigger, rumors spread, numerous species joined us, and we became that much stronger. Different species gathered and lived in the demon god's territory. There definitely would have been many who were waiting for such news. Even if it was the demon god's territory, there weren't only evil monsters. Those who believed they should pool their strength came to the territory, and the territory thrived. And when the territory became a certain size, something strange happened with the dungeon. Dungeon. It was Merdudun's kingdom where the Murlocs lived. What sort of strange thing happened? The Murloc's appearance changed, and the boundaries of the dungeon disappeared. When you arrived at a certain location where the sages gathered, you could receive training from them. The sages? Merdudun popped out as Muyong was puzzled for a moment. It seems like he is talking about the ancient sages. But, they should have all died. Since they would have lost their strength after I died. That is true. They all had the appearance of stone statues. However, their thoughts remained. Thanks to this, the warriors of all kinds of species, as well as myself, were able to rapidly raise our fighting power. The meeting with the sages became an opportunity. Hey, that's really fortunate. They were truly great. Although they had run far away because of my dictatorship. If they had stayed by my side, I wouldn't have been fooled by Dantalion's stupid trick. Rather, Dantalion would have been defeated. Mertyudun spoke with great regret. Dantalion was a demon god. Mertyudun spoke as if it would be natural for them to win against a demon god with the sages. The sages seemed to have been that strong when they were alive. Either way, what Muyong wanted to ask was the next question. How did you become involved with Enrith? Do you know that the demons are fighting as factions? I do. They are quickly fighting a war to conquer more territory. Enrith is also trying to make numerous areas his. Our territory is currently one among a few areas that he is after. It wasn't an all-out war with Enrith. Well, that was probably why they lasted for 2 years, but a war to conquer has started. Muyong thought about what Baltan said. It was progressing fast. Didn't it start after the great calamity in the past? Diablo and Sky Lord. And other things created variables. And those variables were all created or influenced by Muyong. I have gained strength to fight against the variables. However, Muyong didn't just wait for things to happen. Even though variables had appeared, he had gained much power as well. As the future wasn't determined yet, there were that many ways the future could proceed. There are 4 demon kings under Enrith's command. Do you know which among them have come? A demon king couldn't have another demon king as their subordinate. This was normally the case, but it was different for the top 18 demon kings. Especially, Enrith's 4 devas were famous. Sharshazar. He came leading 100,000 devils. While we are enduring their attack and protecting our territory, the fire tars are close to being completely destroyed. You didn't join forces with the fire tars. They have great pride. Maybe because you weren't here, but they didn't even think about cooperating with me. Muyong nodded his head. The fire tars were the owners and natives of this region. The huge giants of flame. Predators. Most devils would avoid fire tars, but if it was one of Enrith's 4 devas, the story was different. However, if it was Augur, the vice-chieftain, he should have been able to work it out. But, even that wasn't possible. Our territory has also lost many strong personnel. Irene also, was killed by Sharshazar. Irene. Muyong remembered. The woman who supported Baltan. However, Baltan was an undead. He should barely have any change in his emotions, but Baltan was furious. Was this the cause of resolve for revenge that appeared on the status viewer? Until revenge was achieved, he would endure all kinds of hardships. Seeing how it was written on the status viewer, Muyong was able to understand how vengeful he was. Is this an evolution as an undead? Regarding this part, Muyong couldn't help but find it slightly odd. Even though he was undead, Baltan was regaining his emotions as a human. If he really thought about it, it wasn't just Baltan. Bi Sungmin was also like this. Is it because of Art of Death, or is there something about undead I'm unaware of? The moment when Muyong clicked his tongue, the door burst open. Lord! Did you come back? A small figure ran as he waddled. It was the dwarf, Kalmu. In the past, Muyong saved him from the underground arena, and he had been following Muyong since. Kalmu. You really did return. Kalmu's body shook violently. He was almost about to weep. I thought something terrible had happened to you. Of course, I didn't believe it, but time passed so quickly. I won't die. Never. Of course. I believe in you. I would like to know in detail what has happened in the territory. Yes. I will explain it all. Kalmu enthusiastically nodded. After Muyong learned about his territory, the things that had changed in the past 2 years. If he was to use Theskil, Lord, he could find out a lot of the things, but a territory couldn't be understood through just numbers. It was much easier to understand when he heard what actually happened, and what was currently happening. It was especially true in the midst of a war. Because the conquest war began, the dwarves were unable to return. Seeing how we can't even get in touch with God's Hammer Bartas, they probably started their own line of defense. Their own defense. It was an extreme act of hiding themselves from the enemy. Like in the past, when they were fleeing from the dragon. But, Muyong needed Bartiz's ability. As he was planning to get God's hammer Baltiz to make the rest of the Immortal King's equipment. The fragments of Immortal King. And the items that contained the full blessing of the moon. As the items were prepared, now all that was left was to find a craftsman. If we make a way and give you soldiers, are you confident you would be able to find Baltiz? You mean me? Yes. Kalmu thought for a moment before he nodded. I will try to do it. No, I can do it. Go with Takan. As he can use magic related to teleportation, when you find Baltiz, he'll be able to connect you to this place right away. Yes. Kalmu cheerfully answered. It seemed like there was one person who was really happy to see him. What was the reason you fought with Sky Lord? It was to get a sample of its skin. We concluded it was the only way to block Sharshazar's lightning, as the Sky Lord sheds every 14 days, I believed we could take advantage of that time. But, the reality was much different from what was imagined. Bolton spoke with a bit of regret as he had faced Sky Lord's overwhelming power. If Muyong hadn't stepped up, he would have lost almost all his soldiers. By the way, speaking of Sharshazar, he was a demon king who used lightning. Although Muyong hasn't encountered him before, as he was one of the top demon kings, it would be that much more powerful. Even if they had become stronger, it would have been hard to battle a demon king like Sharshazar. That was why he gambled to gain an ingredient to block his lightning attack. It won't be easy. However, Muyong never thought he would lose. If he couldn't defeat a demon king like him, how could he compete against demon gods? Muyong petted Anguish. Then, Anguish cried lightly. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Sharshazar liked to play games. Instead of crushing his opponent with overwhelming strength, he liked giving his opponent a bit of hope as he slowly killed them off. This is truly art. A completely yellow man who didn't wear any clothing. Sharshazar admired the giants that were skewered before him. Besides them were creatures of other races. As Sharshazar stretched out his hand, electric waves stirred up the bodies that were skewered and burned them. Don't bring shame to a warrior and kill me. Just kill me. The giants had all died. The creatures of other races had also all died. However, just one. There was one living being. A warrior who was trapped in a huge iron cage, the vice-chieftain Augur. While looking at him, Sharshazar laughed. Didn't they all come running to save you? But, how could I kill you? It's so fun not to. All these giants charged towards Sharshazar to save Augur. As well as the creatures of other races, that were like ants that lived in a certain territory. He didn't really care much about them. You bastard! I will kill you. At least you. I will break every bone, and won't leave a piece of flesh on your body. That is quite amusing. Sharshazar burst into laughter. Afterwards, a devil subordinate of his approached and spoke. Shazar! What? I believe I told you not to talk to me when I'm performing art. I'm sorry. But, the owner of the territory of the mixed races has returned. The creatures of other races. Was there an owner to those of humble origin? Even if they had one, what could he do? Shazar laughed. It's not of any importance. Pop. The devil's body popped. And as Shazar started to laugh once again, Augur started to laugh. He has returned. He, Muyong. Kaya ha ha ha. What is so funny? He didn't die. As expected, he's immortal, Kaya ha 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 ha. Augur laughed as if he'd gone crazy. Crazy bastard. Shazar believed that Augur had finally lost his mind. That he had lost it after seeing his colleagues die off. He didn't pay much attention to the owner of the territory, Muyong. Chapter 214, Demon King of Iron, Enrith, 3. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. What were the lands called territories? Muyeong didn't know the true worth of his land. So, you could say his attributes as a lord were below average. He was just ruling his territory because it was a necessity. However, he didn't think they would develop so much on their own, enough to stop Sharshazar's attacks. Muyeong changed his perception. And he heard that the Dakibas were the one who led the defense against Sharshazar's attacks. The Dakibas had a long relationship with Muyeong. After their leader Suhan had died, they were unstable for a bit before a new leader had appeared. My name is Dontuk. I am the head of the 2,000-strong Golden Dakibi tribe, and currently the leader of all the Dakibas in our territory. A new leader. It was a face Muyeong had never seen before. But, he had heard about the Golden Dakibas. They had gold skin and were the most talented among all Dakibas. However, their numbers were so small that they couldn't contest for the position. While Muyeong was away, they had joined his territory. However, from Dontuk, Muyeong couldn't feel much respect towards him. Although Dontuk spoke words of respect, there was no respect to be found in his behavior. Rather, he seemed to be checking Muyeong out to see how strong he really was. He's strong. He really was strong. Of course, he was strong in terms of Dakibas. Dontuk seemed to be confident in his own skills, and wasn't satisfied with his current position. Eyes of defiance. Muyeong didn't dislike it. However, he didn't like those who spoke words of respect but behaved differently. Are you in charge in place of Suhan? Yes, as we couldn't continuously keep the position vacant. That means it was just temporary. Temporary. Dontuk flinched after hearing those words. He probably never thought Muyeong would say it to his face. However, this was because Muyeong had never appointed Dontuk as the leader of the Dakibas. Although Dontuk could step up during times of crisis in order to protect the territory when Muyeong was away, since he had returned, he needed to correct the chain of command again. For 2 years, the Dakibas have united under my command. In fact, the unit I lead is the strongest unit within the territory. He appealed himself to Muyeong. However, Muyeong wasn't persuaded. Muyeong didn't believe in people who just talked the talk without walking the walk. I have never seen your skills. So, you will need to prove them. What do you mean? Rescue those who were captured by Sharshazar. Including Arand. Muyeong had heard that a lot of people from the territory were taken and imprisoned by Sharshazar and his army. He heard that, due to his unique tastes, he wouldn't easily kill the ones he had confined. In fact, since he confirmed that his people had been taken hostage, he needed to rescue them. Arand was the one with the fastest sword moves within the territory. Currently, he was a hostage. Dontuk's expression hardened. It will be hard with just the Dakibas. You are greedy. A rescue needs to be done with the least amount of people. Were you planning to take all of the Dakibas? You are trying to get everyone killed. Taking all the Dakibas to rescue hostages. That was like saying he was going to go for an all-out war. This was a truly foolish way. Dontuk's face turned red. Muyeong didn't care, and continued to speak. I'm going to hunt Sharshazar. I need a smart hunting dog. I don't need a dog that just barks. A hunt. Sharshazar was acting like he was the owner while Muyeong was away. But the owner had returned. All that was left was for them to hunt the one that was pretending to be the owner. Enrith. In fact, Muyeong could take out Demon King Sharshazar on his own. However, if he were to attack Sharshazar, Enrith would inevitably know about it. Enrith. The one who could be called the Demon Emperor rather than a Demon King. To meddle with him, Muyeong needed to make preparations. It was best to have many hunting dogs. Also, if he were to attack Enrith, Demon God Amun would appear. Attacking without any preparation was like suicide. Yes, I will do it. With 300 Dakibas, I will rescue the imprisoned and Arand. Myung liked his confidence. Myung liked his confidence. Before Dontuk could be allowed to glare at Myung with eyes of defiance, he would need to prove himself. Everything must go quickly as planned. Take care of it within 7 days. Meanwhile, I am going to bring together all the other species living nearby. He would do the same with the fire tars. If they cooperated half-heartedly, it would be no better than working separately. Even if he needed to use a bit of force, he needed to unite the strength of all those who lived by. Especially, if he could get the fire tars to join them, it would be a great help. As he wasn't in a bad relationship with them, things could work out smoothly. And if everything went smoothly and he won against Sharshazar and Enrith, I will have the qualification to get in the demon gods fight. It was the same as obtaining that qualification. Amun and other demon gods would start to pay attention to Myung. Before, he needed to get stronger while avoiding their attention, but now, it was the time to slowly emerge. Myung got up from his seat. There was no time to waste. The fire tars were giants that spouted fire from their entire body. That was why they used the pum tree to neutralize their fire. To them, the pum tree was like their mother and their protector. Of course, they lived near pum trees, and after Myung had solved their problem with the bugs, their relationship wasn't bad. With just his 7 bone dragons, he went to visit their village. However, the number of warriors had been noticeably reduced, and he was unable to see Augur. It's strange. Augur had once told Myung that he was going to build a kingdom of fire tars. He wasn't someone who could be easily killed. Even if the demon king attacked, he had the skills and strength to not easily lose. Go back. Myung met the chief of the fire tars. After the great chieftain died, Myung thought Augur would take his place, but for some reason, he could not see Augur. Because of Bone Dragon's presence, other fire tars were all gathered at the entrance. As Myung got off of a Bone Dragon, the one who seemed to be the leader of the fire tars instantly denied him entry. Can you fight Sharshazar alone? We are fire tars. There is nothing impossible to a fire tar. A firm voice. There were tents. The number of fire tars has also greatly reduced. Myung was able to read some nervousness and anxiety from them. It was something that he had never seen from them in the past. However, Augur was still not visible. Did Augur die? Myung spoke. But, the fire tars had experienced an unimaginable number of battles. Just because another war started, nothing would change drastically. The main reason why the fire tars were acting this way. Perhaps something had happened to Augur. As Myung asked, the leader's expression stiffened. King of a small territory, don't worry about what we do. Augur is my friend. I cannot help but concern myself. Although it was questionable to say Augur was his friend, Augur really was the closest to Myung among those who were alive. From the beginning, he was the only one who understood Myung. Indeed, he was the only fire tar who tried to understand him. Myung continued to talk. Also, I have taken the fire tar's trial. I can't be considered a completely foreign entity. You cannot be recognized as a true warrior just because you have completed 18 stages. Myung had won against the 18th wave in the endless battlefield. However, he had another chance to enter the endless battlefield again. As Myung showed his shoulders, the number 34 was written on it. It was the number he reached when he completed the trial with the Dakibus. This is my second record. Is this not enough? 34. A mere Dakibi could reach that stage. Hey! If he cleared 34 waves, most fire tars wouldn't be able to break his record. However, the leader still had doubting eyes. Trials completed outside are not accepted. If that is the case, then I will once again complete the warrior's trial. If I break your record, you will tell me everything you know about Augur, and all the fire tars will follow me. Myung challenged him. To fire tar warriors, the trial was important. The results couldn't be reversed. The trial stage number written on a person's body represented how strong they were. He could receive more recognition and respect through a trial than through a duel. As the leader placed pressure on one of his shoulders, a number made out of flames appeared. The number was 57. It was a very high number. He seemed to be stronger than the vice-chieftain from 2 years ago. Although, he was slightly lacking compared to the great chieftain. All right. But, what will you wager? I will also bet everything I have. Muyeong bet everything he had, his army and his territory. The leader looked at the bone dragons behind him. If his warriors could use those bone dragons, their fighting power would instantly increase. I accept your bet. The leader stared at Muyeong. However, Muyeong didn't care. 57 stages. It had been a while since he entered the endless battlefield. However, Muyeong was planning to greatly surpass the current leader of the Fire Tars, as well as the great chieftain's record. Nothing had greatly changed. The endless battlefield. The warrior's trial the Fire Tars spoke of was actually something that the fairy Wuhi had created. However, the owner of this trial was currently missing. Due to this, the battlefield hadn't greatly changed. The 100 goblins were closing in on Muyeong from all around. Thud. As he took a step, the ground shook. In that moment, the holy flame spread through the whole area. The holy flame wouldn't die out. It was placed all around the endless battlefield. Blaze. Gay. Screams and cries. And so, the waves were cleared much faster. It only took 10 minutes to clear the first 19 waves, thanks to the holy flame. But, the golems were a different story. They were artifacts, evil creatures that wouldn't die unless you destroyed their central cores. The iron melted due to the fire, but if they still had their central cores, they could rebuild themselves. Muyeong spread his wings, took out exactly 300 feathers, and pierced them directly into the central cores of all 300 golems. Although the flames didn't work, the golems' movements were so slow that it was easy for him to take care of them. It was uncommon to earn points in the endless battlefield. The shop that appeared after clearing 50 waves was definitely different from a normal shop. You could only purchase items with points, and they were all unique and rare items. I can think of it as a bonus. Muyeong shrugged his shoulders and waited for the next wave to start. He was curious as to how far he could now go. Chapter 215, Demon King of Iron, Enrith, 4. Translation, Nadu. Edit, Sefter. The Fire Tars gathered around the trial. A huge round crystal. For ages, the crystal was considered a type of tradition, and the results became something that was respected by everyone. However, there was only one who had gone beyond the 57th level. The great chieftain. Alas, he had died. According to tradition, the vice-chieftain should have taken his place as the leader, but he was too young, and wasn't strong enough. So, for the moment, Yatar had taken up the role of great chieftain. It would be impossible for a Dakibi to surpass the 57th level. But, he did win against the Duke in the past. Wasn't that possible because the great chieftain had weakened the Duke? Opinions were divided. They were strictly warriors, and respected those who were strong. However, Muyeong's strength hasn't been properly evaluated. Yatar looked up at the sky as he held his spear. Usually, the trial took several days. It had been 2 hours. Slowly, the sun was setting. When the night came, the devils would actively start to roam. Get back to your positions. Don't we need to rescue the vice-chieftain? One of the elders asked. Really, the vice-chieftain was the one closest to the bloodline, and Yatar was just a temporary leader. The one who the Fire Tars truly followed was Augur. Yatar also knew of this truth. However, it couldn't be done. They had already sent a few small groups of warriors to rescue Augur, but no one had returned. Annihilation. They just kept being lost. He needed to make a decision. He couldn't just let warriors be sacrificed. Don't think about him anymore. I will not send any more warriors. That. If it keeps going like this, we won't be able to survive either. The palm tree will also be cut down. Whenever the devils took control of a territory, that always happened, as it was their habit to destroy what was most important. However, I will repay the vice-chieftain's debt. I will surely end Sharshazar with these hands. Yatar clenched his fist. A war that lasted more than a year. During that time, Sharshazar toyed with them. He caught fire tars, and then humiliated them before cruelly killing them. The number of fire tars had decreased by more than half. If it continued like this, they would not be able to avoid annihilation. So, he needed to make a big decision. If Augur survived until then, it would be fortunate, but Sharshazar wasn't the type to let his hostages live for a long time. The battle will take place in 2 days. We will prepare for an all-out war. To take Sharshazar's head, a battle of great warriors will begin. Thud. 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 As Yatar stomped his feet, other fire tars followed. The situation with the vice-chieftain was unfortunate, but what Yatar had said was true. If they were to incur any more sacrifices, their odds of winning would become closer to 0. A winning move. He had no choice but to bet everything on the battle that would take place in 2 days. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Hi a. Push. Stab. It was a slightly dark early morning. As they climbed over the fence and walls, the devils invaded the fire tars' village while holding their breaths. A surprise attack. Over 1,000 devils started to attack the fire tars. It was exactly the morning before 2 days had passed. Warriors! Grab your weapon! Kill the devils! Yatar shouted as he twisted off the head of a devil who trespassed in his house. However, he couldn't understand. The devils never invaded like this. These were overwhelmingly different tactics. It was because Sharshazar was arrogant. He had always battled head-on and won, as if there was no need for a surprise attack. But, why? Did information leak? That was the only thought that made sense. Sharshazar would have also been uncomfortable with an all-out war. But, with leaked information, they knew this was the time to invade the fire tars. Yatar quickly got out of his house. Already, everything in his surroundings was burning, and the dead bodies of fire tars were spread all around. The scent of burned flesh was potent. You devils! I, Yatar, am right here. He spun his huge spear. Then, the devils rushed towards Yatar with their wings opened. Whoong! Whoong! Just one devil was weak. But, if there were multiple devils, it was a different story. The gathered demons created a vibrating sound. Every time they flapped their wings, strong winds blew, and Yatar's flame weakened. His body wobbled. Useless trick. Yatar spun his spear faster. Then, the air returned to normal. Like an enraged beast, Yatar rushed towards the devils and ripped them apart. The fire tars who survived the first attack began to adapt to the situation, and grabbed their weapons. However, the devils flooded in like water. There seemed to be at least 10 times more devils than fire tars. If they had joined forces with other fire tars, this sort of surprise attack wouldn't have worked. As they had sent the news that they would prepare for a final attack in 2 days, they decided to gather forces from other areas. But I never thought they would invade before we gathered. Where would the information leak from? Stupid bastard, did you not know that I am always watching this place? Crash! A short but intense lightning bolt shot through Yatar's spine. Gyawag! As he uttered a cry, he looked in front of him. A naked devil. Unlike the other devils, it was yellow-skinned. The devil who could control lightning, Sharshazar, had shown up. I didn't want an all-out attack. Are you trying to deprive me of my joy? Hey? Are you really doing this because you don't know the true reason why I'm running the war like this? Sharshazar twisted his hair with his finger. Then, he spoke as he looked at Yatar, who seemed to be about to pass out. And even though fire tars have the blood of warriors, they are no different in front of death. Isn't that so? Sharshazar seemed very relaxed. Our vice-chieftain, what happened to our vice-chieftain? Yatar struggled as he got up. Although his blood spilled from his wound, it was instantly cauterized and he quickly recovered and regained his normal appearance. But, the inside of his body was thoroughly destroyed. He just didn't show it. Sharshazar smiled brightly. He is still alive. He has a great mentality. I never expected him to resist that much against the great abyss. Even so, he will probably die in an hour or two. Then, I can kill you with a light heart. You will kill me. Sharshazar clicked his tongue. Then, a circle of strong electricity was created around him. You think you can break through my lightning? Zayop. The current became stronger. The circular wall of electricity that Sharshazar had erected, only a very select few would be able to break through this wall. Certainly, a mere fire tar wouldn't be able to do so. Although the fire tars were the top predators among the monsters, to devils, especially in the eyes of demon kings, they were no different from other species. Beings that could die if they were stepped on. Then, try it. I won't even move a finger. This too was a continuation of his game. Sharshazar liked these sorts of games. However, Yatar didn't really have any other choice but to play. Sharshazar spoke. If you do not do it quickly, the fire tars gathered at this place will all die. Even as they spoke, the fire tars were dying off. As it had been almost a year since Sharshazar had shown himself, it wouldn't be easy to defeat him. If there was any possibility of success, it would be that Yatar could obtain a win by taking advantage of Sharshazar's carelessness. Yatar would also well know this. He held his spear and took a deep breath before he ran towards Sharshazar. Zayop. Zayop. Yatar's whole body burned. Although fire tars contained fire due to their natural constitution, they neutralized it with the roots of the pum tree around their waist. However, this electricity was different. The electricity flowed through Yatar's whole body, and pierced through his spine and brain. Suddenly, as his mind went blank and he lost his sight, he clenched his teeth. At least you, no matter what. After the great chieftain had died, though he had gained this position only temporarily, there was no way Yatar didn't have a sense of responsibility. He had a great responsibility to lead his tribe and end the war. To do this, he needed to kill Sharshazar. Even if he were to lose his life, he must accomplish this. That was the only way he could save face. Yatar's whole body slowly moved forward. He passed through the strong electricity and slowly, step by step, headed towards Sharshazar's heart. When he had exactly 4 steps left, Sharshazar couldn't help but be slightly nervous as well. Sharshazar never expected a fire tar to break through the wall. However, the result betrayed those expectations. Stomp! Thud! He approached. 1 step, then another. Now, he was really in range, at a distance where their breaths could reach one another. Sharshazar's body shook lightly. And his finger moved without anyone noticing. Zayop. The electricity became much stronger. The electricity that became twice as strong penetrated Yatar's body. Then, Yatar's whole body began to melt. If it reached this point, living things wouldn't be able to move any further. This would normally be the case. However, stomp! A step. Yatar's face melted grotesquely. His spear became dust, but even then, he stretched out his hand. Thud! And he touched Sharshazar's chest. That was all. Although your courage is worth noting, it is time for you to just die. Sharshazar smiled, but it was slightly twisted. Sharshazar hadn't expected Yatar to scratch his pride by reaching him. It was then. What a shit show! Sharshazar tilted his head for a moment. From his side, a voice was heard. Sharshazar turned his head. Then, he saw a man who stood in his circle of electricity as if it did not affect him at all. Sharshazar never thought he would fail to notice someone come so close to him. More than that, Sharshazar didn't notice the man until he spoke. But the man didn't look at Sharshazar. He looked towards Yatar, who was on the verge of burning up. As promised, I will be taking charge of the fire tars. Do you have any objections? Yatar looked at the man. To be exact, he looked at the man's shoulder, and smiled brightly. Then, he slowly closed his eyes as he collapsed. Who are you? Sharshazar asked as he became slightly cautious. The man looked around. As if he didn't expect to be in a war zone when he emerged. But he didn't show any signs that he was averse to war. Rather, the man could be native to the battlefield. I just became the owner of this place. Swoosh! The man took out his sword. Also, you don't need to hear or remember my name. He spun his weapon. The weapon was black and emitted a very ominous energy. The ominous energy surpassed the Demon King's darkness. Sharshazar instinctively knew this. The man flapped his 6 grey wings. At the same time, the electricity dispersed. The wall had vanished as he flapped his wings. Sharshazar looked at Muyong as if he couldn't believe his eyes. However, the man acted as if it was nothing. Rather, like Sharshazar, the man smiled mischievously and continued to speak. Since you will die at my hands anyway. Swoosh! Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew and fluttered Muyong's clothing. Then, the number on his shoulder was made apparent. 127. Chapter 216, Demon King of Iron, Enrith, End. Translator, Nadu. Editor, Sefter. An overwhelmingly high number. No fire tar, not even the great chieftain, was able to challenge the 100th stage. However, Muyong had accomplished it. The 127th stage. The stage no one had ever reached, an unprecedented level. Still, Muyong didn't seem satisfied. For the 127th to be the last stage. The endless battlefield. Like the name, he expected it to continue endlessly. Muyong continued to progress through the stages. Never stopping. He believed he was faster than everyone else. However, that ended at the 127th stage. After finishing off the artificially made dragons, Muyong was brought back to reality. With the message that stated that no more battlefields existed. As well, he was in the progress of creating the endless battlefield, and thus hadn't fully completed it. He knew it would end eventually, but he couldn't avoid feeling unsatisfied. His own limit. He wanted to see where it lay. However, he couldn't experience it. He had tried, but couldn't reach it. There was nothing more unfulfilling than this. That should have been the case, but then. Muyong looked at Sharshazar. As soon as he came out, he met an opponent who could allow him to experience his own limits. One of the 3 subordinates of Enrith, Demon King of Iron. And, it was the one who was said to be the strongest among the 3, Sharshazar. He never thought Sharshazar would invade this early. But, it was rather a good thing. Muyong took out anguish. To really work up a sweat, he needed to fight. He needed a strong opponent. You will kill me. Sharshazar laughed as if it was a good joke. However, he was still surprised. When did Muyong enter his territory? If Muyong hadn't said anything, and if Sharshazar didn't notice him, it was highly likely that he would have been openly attacked. Sharshazar felt a slight chill. It had been a while since he had met someone this good. Of course, Sharshazar wouldn't have died with just one surprise attack, but it would have greatly impacted his ego. He wouldn't be fooled twice. Who is this guy? Even then, he still couldn't help but wonder. Muyong's outer appearance. Those 6 wings and that odd sense of extremity, how could he explain it? He wasn't a devil, an angel, or a human, or even a Dakibi. If good and evil existed in this world, it was like he stood exactly in the middle. It was the first time Sharshazar had met someone this strange. That was why he could not play games as he did with Yatar. This was because Muyong wasn't an opponent he could fool around with. Just from looking at him, he felt like all his hair was standing on end. I will see if your lightning can still block my attacks. Muyong held anguish. Then, an intense wave of light flooded the surroundings. The stage was set up sooner than he had expected. He was going to gather his army and make preparations to attack Sharshazar, but, if he could kill him without any loss in this one-on-one duel, it was just as good. As Muyong could just act before the news reached Demon King Enrith. Blaze! Soon, the light that emitted from the sword became a fire, and swallowed Muyong's whole body. Muyong spread his wings and prepared to fly. These flames! Sharshazar was surprised once again. He couldn't help but be surprised. The flames that spread around Muyong were something he was very familiar with. The enemy of all demons, Diablo. The flames Muyong had were very similar to Diablo's. Muyong didn't care what Sharshazar was thinking, and leaped lightly. Zing! Zong! A wall of electricity blocked Muyong. Normally, the wall would have burned everything it touched, but in front of Muyong's flames, they were of no use. The holy flames negated ones that were lower than their rank. Even if the lightning was Sharshazar's authority, this meant that it was lower in rank compared to the holy flames. Eek! And Sharshazar wasn't the type to not realize this. And so, he clenched his teeth more tightly. It would be embarrassing to be so overpowered by someone who was nothing more than a mere mixed breed. Clang! Zang! Thud! Powers gathered. From the sky, a gigantic storm formed, and lightning shot down, making Sharshazar's wall thicker. The battle between shield and sword. The fight of whether the sword pierces or the shield blocks had begun. However, this simple action was enough to blow up the whole village. Of course, if those flames were what Sharshazar thought they were, there would, of course, be a gap in their rank, but how do you possess those flames? That couldn't be possible. Diablo was originally a demon god who shouldn't exist in this world. An irregular. There couldn't be two of this sort of absurd existence. If Muyong had a relationship with Diablo, he was someone who all the demon kings and the demon gods should pay attention to. They would all try to get rid of Muyong. And if Sharshazar were to kill Muyong right now, his value would grow even higher. But, Muyong didn't reply. Instead, he showed him. Crash! Whenever anguish struck like a whip, flames poured out and cracked the wall in numerous ways. If you don't want to answer, I will force it out of you. Sharshazar changed his mind. Although there was a difference in their power's rank, he wasn't an opponent he couldn't win against. If Muyong wasn't going to answer, he was going to force it out of him. Then, the wall of electricity slowly started to clump up. And, formed a shape of a sword. Sharshazar held a sword. It didn't take long for him to find out that this was a grave mistake. Clang! The sword made out of electricity broke. Muyong was the master of all swords. He could see through everything that was considered a sword. Even if it was a sword made out of electricity, as long as it was a sword, it couldn't escape Muyong's eyes. Grains exist even in electrical currents. Therefore, if it was in sword form, Muyong could see the grains even more easily. Sharshazar paused for a moment. He never thought his sword of lightning would be overturned this easily. So boring. Muyong spoke with sincerity. Even in his past life, Muyong had not fought against a demon king. Muyong had mostly killed humans, and demon kings weren't opponents he needed to face. However, there was something he definitely felt from observing. This was a demon king. A being that was higher than any devils. Of course, in all things, there would be exceptions. This also applied to Sharshazar. And so, Muyong had high expectations, but if it continued like this, he was no different than any other devils. Boring. That word had triggered Shazar's pride. An unknown, strange presence. Additionally, due to Diablo's flames, he was confused. He dares call me boring. Shazar had a strong sense of pride. And not even a demon god, but an ambiguous mix of races had touched his pride. Clash. Crash. Black lightning shot down, covering Shazar's whole body. Then, the black lightning became his armor and helmet. It wasn't like normal where he was naked. He had now put on some armor. No one has lived after seeing me in this form. Shazar provoked Muyong. He showed his self-confidence. It wasn't an armor he showed just anyone, and showing this armor meant that he was definitely going to kill his opponent. It meant he wanted to fight properly. Muyong slightly raised the corners of his lips. Shazar's true appearance. The Demon King of Black Lightning, Shazar. Now, it should be worth fighting. Muyong hadn't even fully stretched his body yet. Even the 127th stage of the battlefield couldn't make him sweat. For the first time, he was fighting a Demon King. So, while he fought Shazar, he was going to sweat like crazy and find out more about his limits. Shazar needed to try harder than this. Then, when Muyong erased the smile from his face, the counter-attack started. Klaya. Huge black bolts of lightning struck and swallowed Muyong. ******. Flash. Huge rays of light flashed everywhere. A fight between strong beings would always make the land tremble. Also, it influenced others in their surroundings. However, the light suddenly became calm. It was the moment when one being disappeared and returned to the land. Shazar's star has gone out. A huge castle on top of a hill. A man was sitting on a throne in the center of the castle, wearing a black cape. Enrith. Some called him the Demon King of the End, and others called him the Demon King of Iron Blood. The names given as his accomplishments were all gruesome and nightmarish. And Enrith knew that one of his 3 stars had fallen. The stars of the land had whispered it to him. The Demon King of Lightning has. Who in the world harmed him? Was it another Demon King? Murmur. Numerous devil underlings were always on standby. If they were to spread their wings, the land would die. All living things on this land would disappear. However, this would only happen if an order was given. Enrith got up from his seat. A huge figure. He was big enough to make most giants look small. He threw his staff into the air. This staff, that he received from Amun, the demon god who could use all sorts of different magic, had the power of knowledge. The one who harmed Shazar isn't a demon king. Is it another demon god? It isn't a demon god. Then, is it one of the transcendental beings? The owner of all mountains, the king of all dragons, and the child of the moon? No, it isn't one of them either. The 4 transcendental beings who existed in different parts of the world. If it was one of them, they could kill Shazar. However, it wasn't one of the 4 either. Then who in the world could harm the Demon King of Lightning? It can't be possible. He is a human being. The Staff of Knowledge was telling him that the person who killed Shazar was a human. However, that was all. No other information could be known besides this. Nothing like this had ever happened. Unless the target was of the same or similar rank as a demon god, the knowledge wouldn't activate. But, even when he activated his power of knowledge, there wasn't much information he could find out. This could only mean one thing. He is a fisher. A being who escaped death. An unknown fisher was something that the demon gods were vigilant towards. As they were unsure what would come out and what sort of phenomenon it could bring, they called it a fisher. The one who controlled fishers the best was the demon god of the first seat, Baal, but fishers weren't something that even he could fully control. The human who killed Shazar was no different than a fisher. The fisher had to be obliterated as soon as it was observed. especially if it wasn't a fissure that was purposely created. Starting now, go to the area where Sharshazar was in charge of. And kill the human. Enrith had given them an order. Swoosh! At that moment, hundreds of thousands of devils all spread their wings. Whenever they spread their wings, the land died without exception. Within that land, all living beings died. The same thing would happen again this time. Through Enrith's order. This was an inevitable end. Chapter 217, Swamp Owners, 1. Translator, Nadu. Editor, Sefter. In the end, Sharshazar's lightning couldn't save him. Although he had shown his true form and fought well, he couldn't be a true opponent for Muyong. In other words, Muyong was disappointed. Of course, when Sharshazar was fully armed, there were moments when it was dangerous. However, they were almost all strengths related to his authority and, therefore, he couldn't sustain it for long. Eventually, after enduring for about 10 minutes, he lost his armor and his weakness was exposed. Thanks to this, Muyong was able to understand his current standing to some extent. Sharshazar was a high-ranking demon king. The fact that he couldn't be a match for Muyong meant that Muyong's fighting power exceeded that of most demon kings. What if it was Enrith? The one who is called the strongest of all demon kings. It was highly likely that Enrith would have noticed Sharshazar's death the moment it occurred. Perhaps, he may have started to act to put Muyong in danger. However, Muyong was planning to move more quickly than him. Muyong had gained a lot more time by killing Sharshazar on his own. Also, if it was Enrith, he could be strong enough to be Muyong's opponent. Either way, Enrith was incomparably stronger than Sharshazar. Number of brief messages disturbed Muyong's eyes. Among them, he was most interested in the Demon King's crystallization he had earned, that could allow him to gain a devil's skill. He might even be able to learn something similar to Sharshazar's lightning skill. As lightning and fire synergized quite well, that would be helpful. The Demon King of the 27th Legion. He had forgotten about it for a while. The Demon King of the 27th Legion was a skill he had earned in the Blue Temple, as well as a quest that was still in the process of completion. He thought he needed to fulfill Gremory's favor in order to raise its rank, but that didn't seem to be the case. After killing the Demon King Sharshazar, the rank that stopped rising, finally rose. Muyong adjusted his status viewer to check the current state of his skills. Skill title, Demon King of the 27th Legion, S. Description, the qualifications to become the Demon King of the 27th Legion. Gremory originally had 26 legions. Only Demon Kings were able to command the 26 legions and every one of them possessed tremendous power. Asterisk first step. All pure stats are increased by 5. Asterisk second step. All pure stats are increased by 10, and an overflowing power effect is given to all armies under your influence. Overflowing power allows individuals to not tire easily, and raises their strength and stamina by 10. Asterisk last step. In total, 15 pure stats were added due to one skill. Overflowing power. However, rather than the stats, the effect that was added was more noteworthy. There was rarely an effect that could increase strength and stamina on a large scale by 10. You could say it was better than most strengthening effects. Finally, the last step. If Muyong completed a certain action, the effect of the last step would activate, and he would truly walk the path of a Demon King. It was highly likely that this action would be related to Gremory. Perhaps, if he gathered 3 fragments of fissure, the last step might be activated. Just one more step. Soon enough, he would be participating in the fight amongst the demon gods. He would gain that right to fight and destroy them. Zap! Swayayak! All the lightning dissipated when Sharshazar's life ended. However, like sparks, a small amount of electricity remained within the body. Muyong thought about Sharshazar's body. He had never made a creature at the level of a demon king into an undead. The art of death skill was universal, but still, it wasn't completely universal. If your target was a high-rank creature, or if he tried to make a lot of beings into the undead at once, Muyong's body would be affected. However, it's a waste to leave it alone. Making a demon king into an undead. Who would have even thought about this? No, they could have, but it would have only ended as imagination. But, Muyong was on the verge of making his imagination into reality. If he could make demon kings into an undead and increase their number. Also, making Sharshazar into an undead would allow him to find out more about Enrith as well. Muyong had already made up his mind. Art of Death. As he performed the Art of Death skill on Sharshazar by lifting his hand, black energy flowed out, and instantly engulfed the Demon King. However, the black energy couldn't penetrate Sharshazar's body. The reason was simple. Even if Sharshazar's body was now just a corpse, his rank still remained. Although Muyong had created 7 bone dragons, Sharshazar couldn't be compared to most dragons. Muyong continued to wait patiently. Art of Death. The energy was already familiar to Muyong. While it was a skill he received from Death Lord, through numerous trials and errors, he was able to make it his own. As he had always fought with opponents stronger than him, he didn't think he would be unable to make a demon king into an undead. It would just take some time. Meanwhile, the fire tars gathered one by one as the fight with the devils ended. They saw Yatar's corpse, and the number on Muyong's shoulder. They also felt that something was entering Sharshazar's body. SHH. Are you performing a ritual? Don't touch it. The fire tars all became quiet, and watched what Muyong was doing. Although Yatar had died, the fire tars knew about faith and loyalty. There was no way they didn't know what the number on Muyong's shoulder meant. As promised, Muyong had basically become the next great chieftain of the fire tars. This had never happened in the history of the fire tars, but Muyong had helped them on a number of occasions, and was also a strong warrior. In this current era of battles, a strong warrior was always treated well. Of course, as Augur's descendants lived, there were a lot of problems that needed solving, but they were also aware of Muyong's relationship with Augur. So, they needed to respect it. If the great chieftain was doing something, they just needed to quietly watch. It's working. When 30 more minutes had passed, the tips of Muyong's lips rose slightly. As Muyong had expected, the black energy was slowly seeping into Sharshazar's body. In the end, it wasn't impossible. Once a chink in the armor is found, the defense will quickly crumble. The black energy flowed through Sharshazar's body, and soon, a message appeared in front on him. Success. Sharshazar has been created . Name, Sharshazar. Level, 620. Type, Darkness. Strength 620, Agility 615, Stamina 550. Intelligence 673, Wisdom 673, Magic Resistance 600. Magical Attributes 670, Blessing of Lightning 650. Plus the Spear of Lightning that kills its opponent by stabbing, the shape-shifting Lightning Sword, Lightning Wall, and Lightning Storm skills are usable. Plus Demon King's Authority Lightning Guardian, uses lightning, and with that strength, armor can be created. Sharshazar once again raised his body. The fire tars became vigilant, but seeing Muyong's actions, they couldn't help but be confused. As if nothing was odd, Muyong looked and touched Sharshazar's body, and was lost in his thoughts. It's good. He was stronger than any undead he had created so far. For him to be over 600 level. Of course, he was still lower than Muyong's level, but it was important to note that he was the first to create an undead this strong. The first try was always the hardest, the second was easier. However, his intellect seemed a bit lacking. As he had died, and even dropped a crystallization, he seemed a bit slow. Muyong shrugged his shoulders and retrieved the black crystal. It was a crystallization, that came from a demon king. As he placed it into his mouth without any hesitation, Muyong shuddered, as if electricity flowed through his body. The holy flame itself was created by combining all sorts of skills. Perhaps, it believed it could be more helpful if the power of lightning was added. The holy flame was one of the purest strengths Muyong had, so there was nothing bad about raising its rank. Muyong turned his head. The fire tars who gathered near him were all looking at him. From this moment, I will become the ruler of this place. Do you have any objections? Sharshazar isn't dead. You are correct. But, I have raised him from the dead. He is now my slave. We have promised. We must keep our promise. However, we still have Augur, our vice-chieftain. If you save Augur, we will truly follow you. The fire tars were all in agreement. Augur. Muyong also wasn't planning to cast this issue aside. All right. I will immediately go to save Augur. Muyong acted without any hesitation. The fire tars followed him. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. It was easy to finish off the rest of the devils. When the devils saw Sharshazar, the devils didn't even plan to fight, and after seeing that Sharshazar had become their enemy, they lost their will to fight. There was nothing simpler than hunting devils that were trying to escape. That is how they saved Augur, but Augur didn't seem to be himself. The horrible scars that covered his whole body. Although he was alive, he had lost consciousness. This showed everyone how much torture he had endured. However, the treatment for his injuries was simple. The divine blessing skill Muyong possessed was able to cure all his injuries at once. Muyong, you have returned. As soon as Augur woke up, he recognized Muyong. His mind was strong, and even through Sharshazar's torture, he didn't lose his mind. He did show a strange expression after finding out Muyong was now leading the fire tars, but soon accepted it. Augur had dreamed of creating a kingdom of fire tars, but he knew that unless the war with the devils ended, nothing could be achieved. Enrith will soon come to this place. Enrith? It is the name of a demon king I have heard of. Then, I'll let you use my name. It will help gather other fire tars. He had also gained Augur's cooperation. When he declared he would help Muyong, hundreds of fire tars joined each day. We need to move faster than Enrith. Before Enrith reached him, he needed to reach Enrith. It was the same result, but depending on the process, it would create a hugely different outcome. But to do this, he needed to gather as many troops as he could. As if he understood Muyong's worries, Augur spoke. The swamp owners, who live in the swamps, will be able to help you. They are very strong, but they rarely show themselves. But if it's you, you should be able to find them. You should go. Swamp owners? Muyong had never heard of them. But there was no way Augur would lie to him. If they were strong enough for Augur to acknowledge them, they would be as strong as the fire tars, or perhaps even stronger. Enrith. The demon king of iron, Enrith. Muyong began his preparations to defeat him. Chapter 218, Swamp Owners, End. Translator, Nadu. Editor, Sefter and Dearest Kafka. Fairies didn't have homes. Not having a home, it meant that fairies didn't have a world of their own. Of course, unlike other living beings, they did not live using planets as their foundation. Theirs was not a physical material world but an incorporeal spirit world. Like spirits, they needed a world that suited them in order to sustain themselves and survive. Without a world of their own, the fairies had a limited time to live and would die out. And so, the fairies made a contract with Solomon that would enable them to recreate a world they could survive in. They created trials, and as a payment, they would receive a utopia of their choosing. And the fairies knew everything about the trials they managed. They were able to perceive the smallest changes. It was also the same for Wuhi. The endless battlefield. She received an alert from the trial she had created up to stage 127. Someone had completely finished the trial. Wuhi couldn't help but widen her eyes when she saw his name. Muyong. There was no way Wuhi would forget that name. Wasn't it the name of the person she looked for a long time? Well, he got up from the lake that was located below the castle. Then, as she climbed the ladder, a completely dark and gloomy interior became visible. However, it was a place he visited like her own house. She didn't mind the monsters that could be seen in the middle. The lake below the castle was the place he was born and raised. He returned to this place after losing Muyong. It was to recuperate her body that was beginning to fade and also to gain information. Oh, you came. Mom. Also, fairies didn't have parents. In reality, it could be said that nature itself was their parent. They were conceived after being dependent on the rocks, mosses, and small plants for a very long time. However, he didn't hesitate to call a fairy like her mother. He has returned. He completed His trial. I need to return. You are going back? Instead of just staying here. I can't. In order to punish Diablo, he needs He strongly voiced her opinion. Also, it wasn't strange for He to mention Diablo at this place. This was the world where Diablo originally existed. Diablo was a demon god from this world, and this world was the world he originally lived in. After losing their original world, the fairies lived in other worlds like this. The fairy who he called Mom made a sad expression. If he doesn't stay, we will be very bored. Ask Dad to play with you. He is going to leave. By the way, Dad said there was something he wanted to give you. To me? Yes, he should be in the 4th room on the left once you exit this room. Go see him before you leave. I will. After a short goodbye, he left the room. This was the top floor of the castle. The place where the strongest monsters lived. This was also the reason why he wasn't afraid of Muyong. As she lived while seeing all sorts of scary monsters, she was quite used to such things. 1, 2, 3, 4. He arrived in the 4th room. Then, after entering the room, for some reason she couldn't go any further. Hey? What is this? Then, as she turned her head since something felt odd, the sticky adhesive that was on the wall got stuck on His wings. As fairies weren't completely physical beings, physical effects normally didn't work, but if magic was used on an item, it could have an effect on them. Isch. He immediately knew who tricked her and puffed up her cheeks. Do you think you can escape me? Mom. I'm not kidding. He has to go quickly. I need to punish Diablo, the bad monster. He was serious. Mom had never seen her this serious before. In the end, the fairy who he called Mom couldn't help but erase her smile. Do you know how dangerous Diablo is? Even if he was, you said he lost against Dad before. That was a very long time ago. Either way, Diablo is very dangerous. Do you know how dangerous his descendants are as well? Isn't that what the second mom said? Either way, it isn't possible. I don't know how that Muyong made you fall for him, but there are a lot of guys in this world. He is like Dad. What? He reminds me of Dad. But, he's more reliable than Dad. He didn't say too much about Muyong until now. Especially here, as it would obviously lead her to be criticized. A fairy is a playful being who normally couldn't be really serious. It was also the first time that he was serious like this. Then, take this. What is this? It was a small bottle that contained a few drops of liquid. It was perfume. They are water drops that grant wishes. Although there is a time limit, it will allow you to have a short dream. Afterwards, if your and his hearts are the same, I will also acknowledge your relationship. She twirled her hand. Then, a small door was created. As she was the fairy queen, it wasn't difficult for her to open the door to another world. Go. Ah, for your reference, your father is the most reliable guy in the world. That isn't true. He flung herself towards the door. Well, he knew very well that the fairy queen tended to change her mind easily. She didn't know when the queen would change her mind again. And as well he passed the door, the fairy queen let out a sigh. Diablo, you have broken the world's non-interference after all. Because of your useless pride. I cannot help you anymore. Muyong didn't rescue just Augur. Arand, the one who was the elf representative and a skilled individual, was also prisoned with Augur. He was the most skilled person in the territory, as well as a passionate follower of Muyong. In the past, in the underground arena, Arand was captivated by Muyong and didn't hesitate to become his sword. Of course, he did show rebellious attitudes once in a while, but they were all for the sake of improving his skills. I'll go with you. When Muyong prepared to set off, Arand spoke. However, Muyong shook his head. You need to work with the dwarves in the west. Soon, Enrith and his subordinates will reach this place. Everyone had their own role. Bi Sungmin and Takan had already left this place. They left in advance to distract Enrith and his men. Arand made a disappointed expression. However, Muyong had no plans to take anyone to that place. Swamp owners. A name he had heard for the first time. And that was the reason why Muyong went on his own. He had never heard about them. Even in the time of war. Among all the demon kings, devils, and all humanity, no one had ever talked about them. It meant they were that good at hiding. Naturally, something would exist that enabled them to hide. A power that allowed them to avoid all the attention of the world. Muyong was curious about the identity of this power. Thankfully, Augur said that the branch he gave him would tell him about their whereabouts. As quickly as he can'd, he needed to finish this and join the others. I understand. Ah, Batas said he would arrive soon. Is there anything I need to relay to him? Muyong pondered for a moment and then took out a few leather pieces and stone-like items. Give these to him and tell him to make equipment with it. He'll know what he needs to make after seeing the materials. The leather that received the blessing of the moon and Immortal King's strength. Muyong was planning to complete the rest of the equipment to his Immortal King's set. To do this, he needed Batas's skills. Batas was the king of all dwarves, and his skills were the best among them. If the equipment was created through his hands, Muyong would be able to take another leap towards becoming stronger. I understand. With a sad face, Arand stepped aside. After gathering a few items he needed, he spread his wings and left. In the deepest part of the forest, there was a deep swamp, and the swamp owners lived below it. As he entered the area where the branch of the pum tree reacted, the swamp quickly swallowed Muyong up whole. With a bad feeling, Muyong headed down and soon, he was able to find a completely different world. This place is. Under the swamp, another area existed. In the surroundings, there were piles of all kinds of garbage that were sucked in over a very long time, and Muyong stood on top of the mountain of trash and looked around. There were huge mountains in the surroundings. As if this place existed for a very long time, the dense growth of leaves that dropped over caught his attention. As Muyong approached, a familiar voice could be heard at that place. Life form has been identified. Life form has been identified. Drones ejected. Run search. Drones ejected. Run search. Swoosh. The huge mountains started to talk. Then, from their mouths, small bug-like things popped out and shone light on Muyong and his surroundings. Muyong frowned a bit. But, as it wasn't aggressive, he just let them be. However, that wasn't a problem. Language of Earth. Just because Muyong had forgotten about his past didn't mean he had forgotten about those basic things. Through the status viewer, all languages were automatically translated and all humanity used the language they used in their own country. It wasn't strange. However, if they were truly the swamp owners it would be a problem. Didn't the swamp owners exist for a very long time? Augur had told him. They had existed before the fire tars started to live in this place. Augur said he happened to see them long ago, and along with a few others, he had called them the swamp owners, the owners of the swamp. If that was the case, were the swamp owners originally from Earth? Is it similar to the Elersigo? The Elersigo were a weapon created to erase humanity on Earth. However, the machines in front of him were different. User No 35699475521 has been identified. The Ark is being unsealed. The mountain split in half. The inside that was revealed had all kinds of machines linked together. However, they were things Muyong could recognize. With his eyes, he was just able to confirm a countless number of coffins and something that resembled a seed. Then, a hologram of a woman appeared in front of Muyong. Welcome to the 17th Ark, No 35699475521. When a human from Earth reaches the Ark, it gets unsealed. The Ark exists to defend humanity against those who invade Earth, and to avoid their grasp, they gathered hope and temporarily hid. The things inside the coffins are life. If you activate the system, you can regenerate humanity that was once destroyed. The Ark has 5 years' worth of food needed to maintain all of their lives. Muyong felt dizziness for a moment. They were swamp owners, but there was an Ark? After being attacked by Elersigo, humanity took hope and using this they fled. However, there were no traces of humans in the surrounding. In other words, just a few Arks have unexpectedly landed here. However, there were a few words that caught Muyong's attention. Humanity that was once destroyed. It was strange. All humanity entered the underworld through the Blue Temple. The phrase destroyed humanity didn't fit. But, it spoke as if humanity's destruction was already confirmed. The Elersigo and now the Ark. It seems like fate. A strange connection was felt. It felt like homework given to Muyong. Homework for him to solve the problem that was entangled with everything. It has been exactly 1,139,720 hours and 56 minutes since the Earth has been invaded. Will you activate the system? If you confirm the time, it has been roughly 130 years. This again didn't fit the flow of time. Muyong frowned. There was no way the machine would lie. And, Solomon was behind all of these problems. Solomon. Who in the world was he? I need to solve it. The ball of yarn was continuing to tangle up. Muyong was the only one who could unravel the ball of yarn. Chapter 219, Omen of the Ruin, 1. Translator, Nadu. Editor, Sefter. I will not activate it. No 35699475521 has been recognized as the new captain. Following his command, the system will be shut down. Muyong made a decision. He decided he shouldn't make a decision right now regarding this matter. Muyong needed to find out more about the relationship between the Ark and the Elersigo. 130 years ago, if Earth was really attacked, all the problems, as well as the things he thought were problems, might completely change. And as these lives within the Ark was the result of those causes, he needed to carefully handle this matter. This wasn't something Muyong could come to a decision about right now. Instead, Muyong focused on the other functions of the Ark. If the Elersigo were an offensive weapon, the Arks here served a defensive purpose. Using drones and other devices, they scouted at certain times and had weapons to intercept an enemy's attack. When faced with something of this size and unknown bizarreness, it was understandable why Augur would refer to them as the swamp owners. But, it seems like the technology is more advanced than what I remember. Muyong looked at various parts and pondered for a moment. Although he didn't know well, it seemed like the Ark was a collection of much more advanced technology than Muyong knew about. It was ahead by a few tens or hundreds of years. Of course, great research could have taken place in secret locations and through war, they could have made radical scientific advancements. However, he couldn't get rid of the feeling that something was off. Either way, the Ark was made up of highly advanced technology that could not be explained by Muyong's memories of Earth in the early 2000s. No 3569947521. He was also curious about that number as well. It could be the number given to each individual human being, but it didn't exist in Muyoung's memories. Even if his memories were not perfect, it was hard to see such a difference. What was it? What was he missing? Although a few pieces of the puzzle had been gathered, he still couldn't see the big picture. He needed to see the mountain past the trees. But, right now, he couldn't even tell if what he was seeing was just a hill or a mountain. Indeed, there were far too many things that he didn't know about. In the end, the truth of the world is connected to the demon gods. When he thought about it, the demon gods knew how to activate the Elersigo. It meant that they had at least a bit of contact with the Elersigo. It was obvious for them to know a bit about the story behind the Elersigo. If it was Dantalion, the demon god of the 71st seat, he would know more in detail. It was highly likely that Muyoung would get closer to the truth as he hunted demon gods. In the end, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. There was nothing to change. This was important. Muyoung firmly gripped what he already had. Although right now it was no more than a tree, soon he would be able to see the mountains. The 130 missing years and Solomon, among other things. This is a fortress blessed with natural barriers for defense. Muyoung once again looked at the arcs. He figured out how to use the arc a little. Although it was impossible to find out everything since it contained much more advanced technology, the arc recognized Muyoung as its captain, and he would be able to use it the way he wanted. If this was the case, he couldn't just leave the arc be. The enormous arc. Just by having it stand still, it would be a great threat, and if he were to activate the numerous functions of the arc, it could even have an effect on Enrith. Even if it was a vessel that contained the hope of humanity, since he found it, it needed to be useful in the most necessary places. Muyoung nodded his head and quickly went to complete his next step. Takan stood on top of a small hill. Beside him was Bi Sungmin. They each had an army of 10,000 troops behind them. Bi Sungmin led the 10,000 Elersigo and Takan led the specters. Including them, all these forces were hiding through the use of Bi Sungmin and An's magic. In other words, they were laying low. On the path their enemies would definitely use, they waited at this place to annihilate them. This was the task that was given to them. For some reason, Muyoung seems to bring fights wherever he goes. Takan spoke. He had been through battles ever since Takan reunited with him after 2 years. Actually, Muyoung had been like that before they were separated. There wasn't a day that went by without anything happening. Nevertheless, Muyoung didn't get tired. He always became stronger and showed his new appearance. Thanks to this, Takan was motivated, but sometimes even Takan felt Muyoung was overdoing it. Muyoung is a huge typhoon. We are just small whirlwinds that follow him. Is he planning to become a god? Muyoung was already somewhat a god. Lucifer. Although he was unstable, he was definitely someone who was a demigod. However, Muyoung didn't know how to be satisfied. He wasn't satisfied when he ate up Lucifer, and felt like he always needed more. Muyoung is the savior and the liberator. It is impossible for a whirlwind to know the great intentions of a typhoon. In any case, the fate of following Muyoung is never simple. You talk too well for someone who didn't fully recover his memory. Either way, that is probably why Azura chose him. To make him cause pandemonium. Takan shrugged his shoulders. Muyoung was truly the embodiment of war. Someone who harmonized well with the battlefield. It was hard to imagine what sort of existence he would have if he wasn't in the underworld. Did Azura's path also know of Muyoung's tendency? Takan shook his head. There wasn't any good in trying to find out what a god thought. Rather, it was better for him to not know. Memories. Sungmin said no more. Memories. He had been awakened and became stronger, but his memories still hadn't returned. Only the thought that he needed to find someone dominated his mind. However, at the same time, he felt like he shouldn't find that person. So much had already changed. He believed he wasn't in any position to stand confidently in front of his past. The person he needed to find didn't know that he had changed. Even if he did find that person, it would only create chaos. Perhaps, it might only result in negative consequences. At the very least, the timing wasn't right. No, he believed it wasn't and kept his memories far away. As Sungmin kept that to himself, Takan spoke of something he constantly worried about. But, it is strange. Didn't someone say Enrith had the power of knowledge? Then, he should easily be able to figure out that we are hiding out here. After hearing his question, Sungmin twirled his staff. The power of knowledge Enrith possesses isn't perfect. After all, it is something that he received from the demon god Amun. After Sungmin became an elder lich, he was learned many things. Essentially, he had been spiritually enlightened. He had seen through the universe and discovered the order of nature. This was possible because death was also part of the order of nature. Then are you saying your magic is stronger than Amun's? And currently, Sungmin was messing with Enritha's predictions. One of the 3 doors that he received when he was promoted to an elder lich was doing its part. No. I'm just interfering with his predictions using one of the authorities I have received. At least in terms of magic, there isn't anyone who could defeat Amun. Even the great magician of the Blue Temple can't be his opponent. Takan nodded his head. In 2 years, Sungmin had changed. There were now times when even Takan couldn't fully understand what he was saying. Instead, he spoke about the mission they were currently leading. Either way, the 2 demon kings will first lead their men to invade rather than Enrith. As they know Sharshazar has died, they will now want to take his place. There is a high chance they will be competing against each other. And we each need to fight one. I'll take care of Roosevelt. As his authority is similar to mine. I'll take care of Freda. Sharshazar was the strongest demon king who followed Enrith. When he was killed by Muyung, this would be known to Enrith and all his direct subordinates. Of course, the other 2 demon kings, Roosevelt and Freda, would have also known. Although they were a lower rank than Sharshazar, they were still demon kings. Sungmin and Takan couldn't guarantee their victory. Hunting demon kings. Takan spoke in a satisfactory tone. It was the right decision to follow Muyung. Takan was always craving the strong. To see pure strength played out. The demon kings were pure evil. By fighting against them, Takan's skills would also rapidly increase. My minions have identified the location of the enemies. Sungmin twirled his staff. Soon, a small image appeared in front of him. At least 50,000 devils were crossing the ridge. Sungmin spoke as he raised his staff. They will arrive in 30 minutes. Are we going to wait? We will act when the enemies are caught in our trap. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Someone's death could be an opportunity for someone else. This was true for Demon Kings Roosevelt and Freda. Now that Sharshazar was dead, and his position became vacant, the 2 were competing for the position that was closest to Enrith. Due to this, they didn't move with the main army of Enrith, and were advancing a bit more quickly. We are hunting just a mere human. Don't lose against Freda. Roosevelt spoke as he wielded a sword made of ivory. He had 3 pairs of black wings and a grim face. He was the Demon King of Chills, Roosevelt. It was a nickname given because he had killed his enemies in the cruelest and most evil ways. And he now led an army of 20,000 to hunt a human. He still couldn't believe that Sharshazar was killed by a human. Although there was no way Enritha's predictions were incorrect, there definitely had to be something they didn't know about. In Roosevelt's eyes, humans were no different than mere ants. Things that would die if they were stepped on. That was why he didn't greatly think about it. Any demon king would see things the same way. Roosevelt, what do you think about taking in Sharshazar's surviving troops? A devil wearing a knight's suit spoke to Roosevelt. But, Roosevelt shook his head. Sharshazar was a psycho. His subordinates would be no different. Even if we took them in, they would just ruin my reputation. Of course, Freda might think differently. Don't they say that those who are alike tend to play with one another? Well, you are right. If it is Freda who isn't a man or a woman, it is definitely possible. The story that he gave his ass to Sharshazar is quite credible. Ha 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 ha. Roosevelt's devils were quite cheerful. They were relaxed. They were certain of their victory. Of course, they were moving a bit faster than Freda. Wait, this feeling. Roosevelt stopped. The 20,000 men who followed him also stopped flying. They stood above the empty plains. And in the center, Roosevelt found the figure of someone he was familiar with. Sharshazar. Roosevelt's eyes widened. The figure on the plains was Sharshazar. Why was he standing there when he should be dead? Chapter 220, Omen of the Ruin, 2. Translator, Nadu. Editor, Sefter. No. Roosevelt hardened his heart. He was the Demon King of Chills. He was someone who was known as the most ruthless and cruel destroyer. He will die. Sharshazar was a Demon King who was favored by Enrith. Among the 3 Demon Kings, he was the strongest. But, he had definitely died. This was an unquestionable truth. As Enrith had told them himself, there could be no doubt. Then, what was this shell that stood here in front of them? Something else that used its shell. Roosevelt looked at Sharshazar critically. Sharshazar was certainly strong. He could do 150% of the work an average Demon King alone. If he were to fight against Roosevelt, there was a 60% chance he would win. But, if that was just a shell? If that was the enemy's trap? After killing Sharshazar, they did something to his corpse. They had no choice but to think this way, as they were certain of Sharshazar's death. In the end, he was convinced it was the enemy's plot. And he thought about why they would have placed such a noticeable trap. Roosevelt. It's Sharshazar. Was he alive? The subordinates were confused. After all, to devils, or indeed anyone, Sharshazar was a being far more terrifying than Roosevelt. However, while Sharshazar improvised, Roosevelt was calculating. That is someone else wearing Sharshazar's shell. Search the surrounding. I must find out who is behind that shell. The truth. First, find the one who set up the trap. Perhaps it is the one who killed Sharshazar. Although it was revealed he was a human, Roosevelt didn't believe this. A mere human killed Sharshazar? It's not even funny. Enrith's prophecy was certain. But, it couldn't read 100% of everything. Roosevelt thought there was someone who was behind the human. Who was it? What sort of a being was it? A dragon, or a transcendental being? The demon god Diablo and his subordinates couldn't pass the Sky Lord. Among the very few humans who lived in the demon god's territory, a being who was associated with them. The king of the dragons. The 4 transcendental beings that settled in the north, south, east and west. Among them, the king of the dragons settled in the West Sky Garden. There were rumors that he, who was also very hostile to the devils, would enter into a contract with even humans if they had the skills. He's a human. That is how Roosevelt was able to find out the truth of this work. A human who made a contract with the king of the dragons can control 2 dragons. Roosevelt also knew of one such human, as he had already killed a few demon kings. The fact that someone killed Sharshazar obviously meant that they didn't care about Enrith. If it was that human who had the king of the dragons taking care of him, there was a slight possibility that he could have killed Sharshazar. However, Roosevelt was certainly different from Sharshazar. Compared to that lunatic, Roosevelt was slightly less crazy and powerful, but that was when they only compared them individually. Roosevelt's ability to command his army was among the best of all demon kings. Never get close to him. There will definitely be someone hiding near him. The devils used all kinds of magic to search around Sharshazar. And throughout all this, Sharshazar didn't move. Roosevelt had already spread out 200,000 of his men. Although it might just be a shell, it was a trap that was created using Sharshazar. No matter how much caution they took, it wouldn't be enough. Why isn't it moving? The sun started to set. However, Sharshazar still didn't move. Why? What was it after? There were no magics present in his surroundings. He couldn't feel any sort of magical energy. Also, he couldn't read what they were really after. The problem was time. Roosevelt couldn't help but be hasty. They say Freda is almost here. And that he will arrive before the day sets. One of his subordinates spoke. Freda. The Demon King, who was just as strong as Roosevelt. They were competing to gain Enritha's favor. Freda was impatient. If he were to reach this place, he would try to touch Sharshazar right away. There are two choices. To make contact or just go past it. He couldn't delay any longer. He needed to make a choice, and depending on that choice, a result would follow. Roosevelt held a sword made of ivory. And wielded it. Surround it. If Freda arrived here, it would be too late. Sharshazar's shell. Taking care of and retrieving it was also a merit. A great opportunity to gain points with Enrith. He wasn't going to give this opportunity to Freda. I have already searched around this place numerous times. There wasn't anything in his surroundings. Only the shell of Sharshazar. According to Roosevelt's order, 20,000 devils surrounded Sharshazar. Tightly. Without any gaps. Place a curse of deterioration on the body. Of course, it didn't mean he would just attack him straight on. To get maximum results while incurring minimal damage, he needed to put in all sorts of effort. Following Roosevelt's order, a magic unit consisting of 500 soldiers came to the front. If it was a curse cast by 500 top-level devils, it would even work on a Demon King. Thud. 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 As the devils cast the spell and stomped their staffs in mid-air, a loud sound similar to beating drums filled the air. Then, black hands emerged from the devils and surrounded Sharshazar. Those hands represented deterioration. Hands that despaired everything that they touch. If they touched you, you could not defend against it. Is it truly a shell without any will? It was too easy. He could feel the magic weakening. Activate lightning neutralizing magical barrier. We don't know what will happen. That was why they were being extra cautious. Sharshazar was the master of the lightning. So, if they neutralized lightning, most of his power would be negated. A huge earthen barrier was produced. Even if Sharshazar's shell exploded, he would be able to minimize the damage. Was I worried for no reason? There was no reaction. It truly seemed like it was just a shell. Afterwards, Roosevelt held up his ivory sword. At this point, he had set all the measures he could. If he wasted any more time, he would lose the solemnity of a Demon King. Roosevelt stood on the stage that had been prepared. Sharshazar raised his head. It was the first time he had showed a reaction. You couldn't even die properly after being defeated by a mere human. Roosevelt's sword started to vibrate. A vibrating sword that oscillated rapidly. It was Roosevelt's specialty to disassemble everything he touched. Still, you were once a Demon King. To honor you, I will disassemble you without leaving a piece of flesh. Swaayayak. It was a sword that vibrated 300,000 times per second. The sword lost its form and only left an afterimage. In that state, Roosevelt quickly leaped towards Sharshazar. Flutter. Roosevelt's sword pierced through Sharshazar's heart. It touched. Once it touched, it was the end. Sharshazar would turn to dust. At that moment, the world started to change. A reality marble. Ah! Roosevelt frowned for a moment. Sharshazar didn't know how to produce a reality marble. What did this mean? Afterwards, what appeared was wilderness. A place where nothing existed besides the wilderness. In this place, their natural characteristics were maximized. Rumble. Crash. Sharshazar became wild lightning. His whole body turned to lightning, so of course, Roosevelt's attack had no effect. Roosevelt's body grew bigger. Although he had an appearance similar to an elephant, he was much bigger. A reality marble that strengthens our natural characteristics. It was a very unique barrier. However, what was certain was that Roosevelt was isolated in this place. The barrier's core was held by Sharshazar. Unless Roosevelt killed him, he would be unable to escape this place. Crash. That was when Sharshazar started to move. From the beginning, this is what you were after. Roosevelt shouted. He had searched all around him. However, he didn't prepare for a reality marble. From the beginning, it wasn't one of Sharshazar's skills, and he had never expected him to have an item that could activate a reality marble. Unless he possessed an artifact that even demon kings rarely had, it would be hard to create this sort of reality marble. This was a risky and irrational decision. If I had not attacked him on my own, it all would have been a waste. Roosevelt was taken aback. He had made all the necessary preparations. He had weakened Sharshazar and made other preparations just in case. If Roosevelt didn't try to deal with Sharshazar himself, he wouldn't have fallen for such a trick. However, Roosevelt was known to be honorable, and that was where he stumbled. Thanks to this, he decided to face Sharshazar one-on-one. The opponent knew me. He couldn't help but think this way. Roosevelt raised his body. He had fallen for it. However, he couldn't give up just because he'd been fooled. Do you think this sort of barrier can contain me? Sungmin nodded his head. Myung's advice, as well as his own decision, allowed him to successfully tie Roosevelt down. Although it had been risky, since they were successful, there was no time to waste. Gaudiamas. Sungmin raised his staff. Sungmin could open 3 doors. All 3 doors had strong magical creatures sleeping behind them. Sungmin now opened his 3rd door. Thud. Thud. Thump. The monster that ripped through the air as it sprang out was truly gigantic. A being that touched the sky. 9 heads. The king of all monsters, Hydra. Sungmin's body floated up and perched on the Hydra. Then, he spoke to the surrounding specters and undead. From now on, we will attack Roosevelt. Roosevelt was trapped in the barrier, but that merely isolated him from his subordinates. Sungmin then quietly murmured. Only for his victory. Meanwhile, Taken went to strike Freda, along with Augur, the Fire Tars, and the Dakibus. The unpredictable Demon King Freda. Taken didn't know him. But, Myung knew of Freda. Although Myung didn't know where he would pass by, or much about his personality, he roughly knew what he was like. And, like Myung had anticipated, he was able to notice Freda and his subordinates coming towards them from afar. He would be successful if he set up a fortune-telling shop. Taken was talking about Myung. Anyways, since his opponent showed up, he needed to fight. Taken turned his body. Freda is mine. You guys can have the rest. Taken was confident. He didn't have many chances to really fight. However, if it was a demon king, he would be able to satisfy his thirst. The opponent is a demon king. Won't it be difficult on your own? Are you not going to follow Myung's plan? Augur spoke. Certainly, Taken was strong, but he was about 2% lacking to be recognized as being at Demon King level. So, Myung wanted Taken to work with Augur to stop Freda. But, Taken was insisting that he fight against him alone. I can't share this golden opportunity. Besides, I have something up my sleeve. I'd be confident even if my opponent was Myung. Augur took a step back. He couldn't argue with him when they were about to go to battle. If Taken was going to do this, it seemed like there was no way else to handle the situation besides helping him out after ending the other fights. Afterwards, Takan took out his sword. As they arrived at this decision, the enemies noticed that there were troops at this place. Kahihi! What kind of meeting are my praise having together? As he flapped his 3 huge pairs of wings, a devil with a slender body who could be mistaken for a woman or a man rose. This was also as Muyong had anticipated. As the first devil to act would be Freda, he had told them to instantly isolate him. I didn't think there would come a day for me to fight while riding a bone dragon. Augur smacked his lips as he got on a bone dragon. By now, Takan had already advanced to attack Freda. I will definitely win. Augur raised a huge club to his shoulder. In this fight, Roosevelt would be the biggest obstacle. Freda was an unpredictable demon king. He was a hot-tempered opponent who would fight against them without much coaxing. On the other hand, Roosevelt was cool-headed. He knew how to read the battle. In fact, the one who led the battles at the start of Enrith's wars was also Roosevelt. The reason why they used Sharshazar just as bait was solely due to this reason. If Roosevelt's hands are tied, that is enough. Muyong had arrived at his territory by leading the ark that the augur called the Swamp Owners. The ark had a strong defense mechanism. With this, if he had to defend his territory, it would be much easier. Muyong didn't participate in the 2 battles and instead protected his territory. Enrith was watching. He would sense Roosevelt and Freda fighting. Unlike when they fought against Sharshazar, Enrith would show up. Either way, it wasn't a fight that would end in just 2 days. Muyong did not want to reveal his fighting power as much as he could. His power would only be used to face Enrith. Lord, Kalmo has returned. Kalmo, who had been ordered to bring God Hand Bartas, had returned. Muyong nodded. Rise. A secretary opened the door to the Lord's room. Soon, a big bearded dwarf, Kalmo, entered. Where is Bartas? Unfortunately, he was unable to come with me. Is that so? Muyong frowned. God Hand Bartas. Muyong needed him to create the rest of the Immortal King's equipment. As if Kalmo could read Muyong's disappointment, Kalmo smiled. However, the equipment is created. Clank! Clunk! With a loud sound, a few dwarves entered. In their hands, there was a huge box.